Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to thank members across both chambers for their contributions to this and their continued work, particularly the Prisons Minister for engaging collaboratively with Liberal Democrats in the other place and making concessions both in the legislation and at the dispatch box. We are pleased to see the Government amendment to the Lords Amendment 7 today, which would introduce the provision of free transcripts of sentencing remarks for victims. As a long-standing campaign of my honourable friend, the member for Richmond Park, for the provision of all court transcripts, it is a great first step to see victims gaining access to this improved level of transparency and accountability.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to her for giving way. I just want to take this opportunity to say my own personal thanks to the Minister, to everybody involved in bringing the legislation to this stage, and also pay tribute once again to my constituent Juliana Tillitsi, who came to see me when she was charged £7,000 for the transcript of the trial that saw her rapist sent to prison. This is a huge step forward for victims of all kinds, and I am really, really pleased to see this in our debate today. And I just want to put on record my huge thanks to everyone for that.
I thank my honourable friend for reminding us that at the heart of this piece of legislation that's coming forward in the sentencing bill is victims and their ability to understand what's come in sentencing remarks. Because given that so much happens in a court trial, whether reliving past trauma or confronting a perpetrator, for many, listening to proceedings can feel like a foreign language. For others who choose not to attend the sentencing hearing, they have no knowledge of what was said. That is why having consistent free access to transcripts is so vital, as it provides an opportunity to process the events of court proceedings afterwards or to read them for the first time. For many, this can give closure and an opportunity to move on, but it is also the route for appealing a sentence if they believe it to have been unduly lenient. Providing victims with court transcripts free of charge would markedly improve experiences for victims and survivors, but I do have some questions regarding the amendment that the Government have brought forward. So my questions to the Minister are, could he provide some clarity as to the application of the term victim is in the definition used by the Victims Code, and whether in the case that a victim is unable to personally request sentencing remarks, such as victims without capacity or victims that are children, that immediate families of victims are included within the provision?
Will the member give way?
I'll happily give way to my honourable member.
Because I can't ask the Minister himself, I might ask you whether you think we also need clarity on whether deceased victims' family members might also have a right.
I thank the honourable member for his point, and the Victims Code lays out that a victim, if they are deceased, the immediate family, being parents or siblings, would be included, which is why I asked that question of the Minister. Also, subsection 3C allows the Secretary of State to provide exceptions to the requirement to supply a transcript of sentencing remarks. What sort of exceptions does the Government anticipate? And as per subsection 3D, what sort of information might be omitted from a transcript? And if the Secretary of State doesn't plan to use sweeping powers to accept or omit, why have such provisions in the amendment been included? The previous Government ran a very limited pilot of free court transcripts. Will this Government publish a detailed publication of the review of that pilot? We believe that this could and should go much further, as per the campaign by my honourable friend for Richmond and Baroness Brinton in the other place. And we have tabled an amendment to the Victims and Courts Bill, which would mean all transcripts were provided free of charge, including judicial summaries and bail decisions. The Chief Lady Justice recently spoke to the Justice Select Committee about a pilot with HMTCS, the use for AI for transcripts, especially in the asylum and immigration courts, and she described it as a great success. So I'd be keen to understand if the Government will work with the Liberal Democrats to progress this work, because we do appreciate the growing cross-party support on this issue and the work of all in the other place to achieve this really important first step today. We also welcome the Government committing to a statutory annual report into the state of prison capacity and, importantly, the probation service. This is an important mechanism for oversight which will improve long-term assessments of the health of our justice system, and we were very happy to see the Government accept our amendment to remove clause 35 from the bill, which did nothing to address the crisis in our justice system and was totally at odds with the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. We also welcome the amendments tabled by the Government to strengthen protections in relation to the Lord Chancellor's approval of sentencing sentencing guidelines. We have been supportive of many of the provisions in the bill aimed at addressing some of the key failings in our crumbling justice system. Our courts, prisons and probation services are all at breaking point and without urgent intervention are at risk of failing completely. The bill offered an opportunity to ease some of those pressures our system faces, where currently the needs of victims, offenders and the system more widely are too often ignored. We do also need to ensure that our prison system is one of rehabilitation, one that ends the cycle of reoffending and reduces those long-term pressures. All of the Liberal Democrat work on this bill has been in that vein in order to get the legislation into a better place to achieve those aims. So to briefly conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, we realise the mess our justice system finds itself in. We've always aimed to work collaboratively and productively cross-party to ensure that we can begin to turn the tide on this, and we will continue to do so. We need a sustainable solution to this crisis, which includes cutting reoffending and tackling the court backlog to reduce the number of people in prison on remand, and properly resourcing our probation service, which will no doubt feel the impact of this legislation most acutely. The bill contains a number of proposals that Lib Dems have campaigned for as part of the wider package of reform, but it still could go much further to ensure that it's fit for purpose to protect victims and safeguard our justice system for the future. Thank you.
Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased that this bill will deliver some long-term and sustainable reform to our criminal justice system and make sure that we never again end up in the position where dangerous offenders aren't being locked up, the police don't have capacity to make arrests and courts are not able to hold trials. It was frankly a breakdown in law and order like nothing we have seen in modern times, because the last government increased sentence lengths without reckoning with the consequences of doing that, adding just 500 places in their time in office, and that was a dereliction of duty beyond comprehension, and I think that's something that must not be forgotten in the context of this bill. Our prisons were brought to the point of crisis, and frankly they only survived till the general election in 24 because they, on the quiet, largely released 10,000 offenders, completely undermining public confidence in our justice system. And why? Well, it's true, and the opposition Shadow Justice Minister shaking his head. I was working in the prison service, I know what went down, I know exactly what happened. And that's why this bill is so important, because whilst it was born out of necessity, it is bringing forward the kind of reform which will be absolutely transformational and which, frankly, governments of all colours should maybe have done in years past. That doesn't mean we're not being tough on crime, in fact quite the opposite, because as the Minister's laid out today, there's going to be more people in prison at the end of this Parliament than there has ever been in the past. But as has been previously been outlined in this debate today, anyone that thinks you can simply build your way out of this crisis is not living in the real world and is not serious about public policy. So it is welcome that we're deporting more national offenders and bearing down on the court backlog to reduce remand prisoners. All of this is necessary but not sufficient, which is why this bill is very, very welcome today. I want to speak specifically about Amendments 1 and 14 around broadening